Oh my God. Autopilot. It wasn't me. I didn't see you. That's what my daughter-in-law yelled when the car hit me. I was getting my Wednesday package. Quiet street. Then, impact. At the hospital, they set my leg. The lights were harsh. The meds made time fuzzy. She sat by my bed, saying, "Autopilot, I'll handle everything. Don't worry." When I got home, small things were wrong. A key missing, mail opened, the lock felt different. And then I heard one line I wasn't meant to hear. That's when I stopped believing it was an accident. Before I show you what I found, tap subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from, and please share this story with one person. You never know who might be going through something like this. Now let's get into it. My name is Eleanor Davis. I'm 66 years old, and I've lived in the same two-story brick house in South Carolina for 31 years. My late husband, Charles, and I picked it out after a summer storm nearly took the roof off our old place. We rebuilt from scratch, every beam, every tile, every flower in the garden. It wasn't just a house, it was ours. And after he passed 5 years ago, it became mine. Every morning, I'd brew a cup of strong coffee, no cream, 1 sugar, and sit by the window while the sun filtered through the lace curtains Charles never liked, but let me hang anyway. The kitchen radio would hum with soft gospel, and I'd hum along as I watered the little potted plants lined up on the sill. I knew the creaks in the floorboard like I knew the lines on my palms. This house had memory, and I lived in it, steady as ever. My son, Brandon, didn't visit much. He called every other Sunday, sometimes every third. He was always busy with work or weekend trips with his wife, Jasmine. She's the type who wears heels at family cookouts and tells you how to season your greens, even though she's never made them herself. I kept my peace. I wasn't trying to be the mother-in-law horror story. We all have our roles. The last time they came by, Jasmine walked through my living room with a realtor's eye. "You know, with a little staging, this place could really pop on the market," she said, like she was talking about someone else's home. Brandon laughed nervously. I laughed too, but I didn't find it funny. Still, I let things slide. I always had. That was my way. Quiet strength. Let people think you don't see, and they'll show you who they really are. I kept the front yard tidy, the porch swept, and the mailbox painted. Even the neighbor's cat knew where not to scratch. I may not be as spry as I was at 40, but I still hauled groceries, trimmed the hedges, and paid every bill myself. That house stood because I stood. Sometimes I'd take long walks just to admire the neighborhood, blooming through the seasons. I knew all the families 2 doors down, and the ones who'd moved away but still sent Christmas cards. I clipped coupons from the newspaper, baked cornbread from memory, and sang hymns in the kitchen on Sundays, even when no one else was around to hear them. Every Wednesday, like clockwork, a brown package arrived from my cousin in Atlanta. Homemade preserves, scented soaps, church bulletins she thought I'd like. And every Wednesday, I'd walk out to the edge of the driveway to pick it up, cane in hand if I needed it, but usually not. That package was my little reminder that I was still thought of, still part of something beyond the 4 walls of my home. That particular Wednesday was bright and breezy. I remember it because the magnolia tree had just started to bloom again, and I was thinking of clipping a few blossoms for the kitchen vase. I put on my soft slippers, tied my headscarf, and stepped out onto the porch like I always did. The gospel station was still playing inside, and I could hear the faint chorus of Mahalia Jackson's voice floating through the screen door. I smiled. The sky was clear. My back didn't hurt. It was a good day. I didn't know that within the hour, everything I thought was mine, my house, my independence, my peace, would be hanging by a thread. But standing at the end of that driveway, looking at that brown package nestled neatly against the mailbox post, I didn't feel fear. I felt normal. And that's what gets me the most. Not the pain that came later, not the betrayal, but the fact that I didn't see it coming. Not from her. I bent down to pick up the package. I didn't hear the car at first. It wasn't like the old days when engines growled and tires crunched gravel. No, this one whispered. It coasted. and just before the world went sideways, I heard a click, the sound of a car door unlocking, and a hum. That humming silence that only comes from machines pretending to think. Then, nothing. I didn't remember the moment of impact until much later, not when the pain first hit, not even at the hospital. It came back to me one night, weeks down the line, like a bad dream. You wake up remembering in pieces. The screech of plastic wheels over the curb, the heat of the pavement against my cheek, the sting of citrus jam seeping through my sweater. I didn't piece it together until later. Not the crash, not the sound, just the smell of citrus jam and the weight of being erased. All I can say now is this. In the last peaceful moment before it all changed, I remember thinking about the jam jar I was going to open with lunch. And then, black. That was the end of my quiet life, and the beginning of her plan. They say the worst things in life never announce themselves. That morning gave me no sign of what was coming. The sun was out, the porch was still damp with dew, and a soft wind rustled the curtains like a lullaby. It was the kind of morning that felt like a blessing, not a warning. I remember running my fingers along the wooden banister as I stepped down the front porch. I took my time. The air was just right. Cool enough to keep the mosquitoes away, warm enough to not need a sweater. I didn't need my cane that day. My bones didn't ache. My knees felt strong. I thought about checking the mailbox while I was down there. Might as well, I figured, since I was already heading to get the package. The driveway stretched ahead, familiar and cracked in all the same place. I stepped around the old oil stain near the garage. Brandon used to park there when he was a teenager, before Jasmine came into the picture and everything got adjusted. I made it to the curb, bent down slowly, and lifted the brown package addressed in my cousin's loopy handwriting. Then came the sound, not a roar, not a screech, a hum. I turned my head just slightly, just enough to see the sleek metallic front of a car gliding toward me. I opened my mouth, and then, impact. It felt like the ground punched me, not the other way around. A burst of white-hot pain radiated through my left side, then silence. Not a peaceful silence, the kind of silence that comes with your ears ringing, your thoughts scrambling, and your breath stolen right out of your chest. I don't remember hitting the pavement. I remember the second after, the smell of hot rubber, the feeling of cold stone on my back, and a sharp jab above my eyebrow. I blinked. Someone shouted. It wasn't Brandon. It was Jasmine. "Oh my God, Mama Eleanor," she screamed. "I didn't see you. Are you okay? Oh my God." Her voice was panicked, but I didn't hear panic in her tone. It was like she was performing for someone not even there. She was crouched beside me, not touching me, just hovering. "Don't move." "The ambulance is coming. I didn't mean to. The car it didn't stop." She kept saying that, over and over again. It didn't stop. I wanted to speak, to ask her what she was doing in my driveway at that hour, but the words didn't come. All I could do was stare at her perfect eyeliner, her new hair extensions, her white blouse with not a wrinkle or speck of dirt on it. I noticed how calm she looked, not scared, not shaken, just ready. The paramedics arrived. They asked her if she was the one who called. She nodded and stepped back, letting them do their job like she was the one giving permission. They rolled me into the ambulance, and she followed, sitting in the front like family. Brandon met us at the hospital. He looked tired, distracted, holding a folder of insurance forms under one arm. When I saw his face, I thought he'd be angry or worried or shocked. Instead, he said, "Jazz told me what happened. It was the autopilot, right?" She nodded, biting her lower lip. "These cars are too smart for their own good," she said softly. "I was on the phone. I thought it would stop like it always does." Brandon didn't ask for more. He took her hand. The nurse told me I had a broken leg, fractured wrist, and a gash over my right brow that took 3 stitches. The pain was dull, manageable, but the fog in my head, that stayed. Nobody asked if I remembered anything. No one pulled me aside and said, "Do you think she did it on purpose?" No. Everyone was too eager to move on, like this was just a little incident, just bad luck. "She's lucky," I heard one nurse whisper. "Could have been worse. At least her daughter-in-law was right there to help." Right there. She stayed close. Too close. She brought homemade soup and sugarless juice, kept talking about how these self-driving cars were getting out of hand. She gave interviews like she was my caretaker, even signed some forms while I dozed in and out on pain meds. 2 days later, they wheeled me into a rehab center. "Just for a couple of weeks," Brandon said, "until the swelling goes down." I remember being rolled down that hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing above. A nurse adjusted the blanket around my legs and smiled at me like I was fading. In that moment, something clicked. They weren't just helping, they were moving me out of the way. It wasn't just a hit, it was a handoff. And somewhere in that hospital, Jasmine was probably smiling at her own reflection in the mirror, already picking out curtains for my living room. Later that night, alone in the rehab room with the television playing some reality show I wasn't watching, I made a list in my mind. Not of things to do, but things that felt off. The way she was there at the perfect time. The fact that she wasn't panicked. Not truly. The way Brandon didn't ask questions. The way they already had a plan for my discharge. I counted every one of those things like I was stacking coins, each one confirming something I didn't want to believe. And while my body was being stitched and set, my mind began sharpening. I didn't make a fuss. I let them push the wheelchair. I let them tuck my purse into my lap like I was a child who needed help remembering her name. But deep down, something was awake now. Something old and sharp. I'd lived too long and seen too much to believe in coincidence. I may have been down, but I wasn't out. And I wasn't about to let Jasmine turn me into a side note in my own story. No, ma'am. I was going to remember. I was going to rebuild. And when the time came, I'd be ready. The walls of the rehab center were a dull beige, the kind that sucked the warmth out of a room no matter how much sunlight poured in, and they'd wheeled me into a semi-private suite with a view of the parking lot and a window too high to see the ground. My leg was propped up in a brace, my wrist wrapped tight. I could barely shift without gritting my teeth. The first night, a nurse named Gloria introduced herself and offered me a welcome packet, full of activity schedules, dietary plans, and an emergency call button. I thanked her politely, but inside, I was already scanning for anything out of place. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. I kept going back to that moment on the driveway, how Jasmine had appeared, how calm she was, how she never reached for me, not once. And the way Brandon had looked right past me at the hospital, speaking only to Jasmine as if I wasn't even in the bed. It wasn't just the accident that was strange. It was everything that came after. By day 2, things began to slip. My mail didn't come. I asked the front desk, and they said nothing had been forwarded. I called my neighbor, Loretta Lee, who said she saw someone real pretty with long hair picking it up from my porch earlier that week. Jasmine. Of course. I asked Brandon about it the next time he visited. Jazz just redirected it to our address temporarily, he said, like it was nothing. You don't need to be worrying about bills while you're recovering. But I do worry, I replied. They're my bills. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's all just for now, Ma. Jazz is just trying to help. Help. That word was starting to feel like a leash. The next morning, a social worker stopped by to check on my recovery plan. She asked how I was adjusting, whether I had concerns about returning home. I told her I was managing just fine and hoped to be discharged in a week or so. She paused, flipping through her tablet. That's interesting, she said, tapping the screen, because your daughter-in-law mentioned she's looking into long-term care options, possibly assisted living. Has there been a change in your support network? No, I said firmly. There's been no change at all. She made a note and nodded. Well, if anything changes, let us know. That night, I called Brandon again. He didn't pick up. Jasmine texted back, Brand's swamped with work. Just rest up, Mama Eleanor. We've got everything handled. Handled. Like I was a case file. The next day, I asked the nurse if anyone had inquired about power of attorney paperwork. She looked uncomfortable, said it was confidential, but her eyes gave it away. They were circling me like vultures, quiet, smiling, filing things I hadn't signed, planning things I hadn't agreed to. Meals at the rehab center became a routine blur, soft meatloaf, overcooked peas, and conversations I wasn't part of. But I listened. I always listened. And I heard things. Orderlies whispering about a lady who might be moved permanently. Nurses asking if I had any family contacts beyond the ones listed. The way they tiptoed around me told me more than their words ever could. On day 5, Jasmine visited. She brought flowers, white lilies. I smiled politely. She sat on the edge of the chair, legs crossed, posture perfect. "We're working on some solutions, Mama Eleanor," she said, voice syrupy. "You need to be somewhere comfortable, peaceful, with round-the-clock support." "I'm not dying," I said. She tilted her head. "No, of course not. But you've had a lot going on. Stress isn't good for recovery." I wanted to slap that smug calm right off her face. She left before lunch. Left the flowers behind, too. On day 6, I finally called Marjorie. She'd been my friend for nearly 40 years. We met at church, raised our kids in the same neighborhood, and once co-chaired the city's senior voter drive. She'd worked as a paralegal for 2 decades before retiring. If there was one person who'd smell trouble a mile away, it was her. She arrived the next afternoon wearing a navy pantsuit and fire in her eyes. "What in the world is going on, Elle? I got your message, dropped everything, and drove straight here." I told her everything. The car, the hospital, the rehab, the forms, the mail, the silence. She didn't interrupt once, just listened, nodding slowly, her jaw tightening with every word. When I finished, she stood up, pulled a small leather notebook from her bag, and said, "All right, first things first. Do you have access to your bank account?" "No," I said. "My checkbook's at home." She wrote that down. "We'll fix that." "Has anyone shown you anything you've supposedly signed?" "No." "Has anyone asked for your consent in writing for power of attorney, real estate transactions, or medical decisions?" "Not a word." She looked me in the eye. "Then they're bluffing, and if they've already moved ahead, it's going to bite them hard." For the first time in days, I exhaled. She spent the rest of the afternoon making calls, speaking with the rehab director, pulling my patient file, and checking whether any notarized forms had gone through under my name, and Jasmine's name came up twice, as an emergency contact and on a visitor's log for a meeting with the facility's social services manager. Brandon's name was absent. By the end of the day, Marjorie had set wheels in motion. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said, kissing my cheek. "Don't let anyone feed you any more of this, you just rest nonsense. Eyes open, Eleanor. We're going to fix this." I watched her leave with her head high and her heels clicking against the tile like a gavel. That night, I slept with a notebook beside my bed and a pen in my good hand. Every time I remembered something, some comment Jasmine made, a look from a nurse, a missed call, I wrote it down. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me grateful. They wanted me out of the way. But I was wide awake now, and I wasn't going anywhere. 10 days into rehab, I told the staff I wanted to be discharged early. They said it wasn't advisable. I said it wasn't a request. I signed the papers, let them wheel me out, and called Marjorie to pick me up. She pulled up in her old Buick with a fresh blowout and a travel mug of black coffee waiting for me in the cup holder. That's real friendship. The ride home felt longer than usual, not because of the distance, but because of the weight. My body still ached, but the heavier thing pressing on my chest was uncertainty. I had no idea what I'd find when I got to my own house. We pulled up just past noon. My driveway looked exactly the same, but something felt off. The garbage bins were lined up differently. The potted plants had been moved to the other side of the porch, and the welcome mat wasn't mine. Mine had little bluebirds on it. This one was some generic gray rectangle. Marjorie helped me out of the car. I walked with my cane slowly, one foot in front of the other. My key was in my purse. I reached for it like muscle memory, and then I froze. My name was gone from the mailbox. No E. Davis, no address placard, just blank white space. I looked at Marjorie. She didn't say a word, just stood behind me like a wall. I stepped onto the porch. The air felt too still, too staged, like I'd walked onto a film set meant to look like my life. I slipped the key into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. From inside, I heard footsteps, and then the door opened. Jasmine. She was dressed like she was expecting company. Tight blouse, full makeup, expensive perfume I could smell from the threshold. Her eyes widened just enough to register surprise, but not guilt. "Mama Eleanor," she said sweetly, "you're home early." "I live here," I said. "Oh, well, yes, of course. But the locks were changed while you were in recovery, just for safety." "For whose safety?" Before she could answer, Brandon appeared behind her. He looked uncomfortable. He always did when things got real. He avoided my eyes. "Ma," he said, "we were going to tell you. The house needed some updates, and with you being gone, we figured we'd just handle it." "You changed the locks without telling me," I said. "Took my name off the mailbox." "It's temporary," Jasmine chimed in. "We just didn't want anything to get lost in the shuffle. You need to focus on healing." She stepped outside and gently shut the door behind her, like she was afraid I might see something inside. I saw enough. New curtains, a different rug, boxes in the hallway. My hallway. "Did you list the house?" I asked. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Brandon finally looked up. "It's just a conversation with a broker, just to explore options." "I'm not dead," I said, "and I'm not senile." "Mama, we're just trying to help," he said. There it was again, that word, help. I leaned heavily on my cane. "Give me the new key." Brandon hesitated. Jasmine touched his arm. "It's not safe yet," she said. "There's still a fall risk with the stairs. We filed for temporary guardianship. You'll stay with us for now." "No," I said, "I won't." "We're just following protocol," she said, still smiling. "You're not in a position to make big decisions right now." Marjorie stepped forward. "She's perfectly capable. And unless you have a court order that says otherwise, you're unlawfully restricting her access to her own property." Jasmine's face dropped for a split second. Then that smile came back like a mask being reset. "We're just trying to do what's best," she said. "For who?" Marjorie asked. "Because it sure ain't for Eleanor." The silence that followed said everything. I looked at Brandon. "Son, is this what we've come to?" He didn't answer. That hurt more than the fall. I hadn't come for a scene. I'd come for a crack in their story. I turned, walked slowly back down those porch steps. My cane tapped with each step, echoing louder than any reply they could give me. We got in the car. I didn't say a word until we were halfway down the street. Marjorie gripped the steering wheel tight. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said. "Good," she replied, "because anger gets things done." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat up in her guest room, staring at the ceiling, playing every moment back in my head. The timing, the lies, the paperwork, the way they looked at me like I was already gone. I kept replaying that look on Jasmine's face when she opened the door. Not startled, not guilty, just ready, like she'd been rehearsing for weeks, like I was the one intruding on her space. She had already made herself comfortable in a life that wasn't hers to begin with. And Brandon? He just stood there, like a ghost of himself. The same boy who used to cry when I left him at school, who once built me a paper crown for Mother's Day. Now a grown man with nothing to say. Later, I looked through my purse. Everything was still there. But tucked behind a receipt was a handwritten note. Jasmine's handwriting. "Keep resting. Don't worry about anything. We've got this." Marjorie knocked gently on the door around 2 a.m. "You still awake?" I nodded. She sat at the foot of the bed, holding 2 mugs of warm milk like we were college girls again, swapping stories. "They think they've got you beat," she said. I nodded again. "I know." She gave me a half smile. "Good." Then let's make that the last mistake they ever make. And I believed her. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me grateful. They wanted me gone. But I was right here, and I was going to make sure they remembered that. I stayed with Marjorie after that night. Her guest room wasn't big, but it was warm and clean, and the scent of lemon oil from her furniture polish made it feel like safety. She cooked breakfast every morning, real breakfast, eggs, grits, toast with apple butter, not the bland hospital mush they served me in rehab. And every morning, while I sat with my leg propped up, she brought out her little leather notebook and said, "Let's begin." She wasn't playing. By the second morning, she had already drafted a list of things Jasmine had likely done behind my back, and with each item, she assigned an action. Mail redirection, file a postal fraud report, guardianship paperwork, request copies through probate, bank account access, verify signatory authority with the credit union, real estate interference, check for any listing, appraisal, or sale attempts. Control the paper, control the play, Marjorie said. If they think they've already won, they'll get sloppy. That's when we catch them. She helped me contact the post office. The clerk on the line confirmed that a mail forwarding request had indeed been filed. It was submitted online from an IP address linked to a residential service. When I asked where it had been redirected, she hesitated. I insisted. She gave me the address, Brandon and Jasmine's. The request timestamp read 9:12 a.m., the morning after the crash. They didn't even wait a day. We contacted my primary care physician next. Marjorie asked if I'd signed any new medical directives or consented to any capacity evaluations. The nurse pulled my file and said, "Not that I can see, but your daughter-in-law requested copies of your medical history 2 weeks ago, said it was for a specialist consult. Did I authorize that?" I asked. She paused. "There's no signed release in here." That night, Marjorie sat at her dining table, scanning through a growing stack of printed documents. "They're building a case, Eleanor, or trying to. But without your signature, it's just smoke. We need to stay ahead of it." I nodded, feeling more like myself than I had in weeks, maybe months. But there was still one piece missing. The car, the Tesla. If Jasmine really had it on autopilot, and if the accident truly was an accident, that car should have been brought in for diagnostics. An insurance claim had to have been filed. There would be records, especially from Tesla. So we called the claims line. I let Marjorie do the talking. She had a calm but firm voice, the kind that demanded respect without raising volume. "Hello. We're looking to confirm the status of a recent incident involving a Model Y registered under Jasmine Harris Davis. The pedestrian injured is Eleanor Davis. Yes, that's the one speaking now. She hasn't received any claim documentation, though she was the injured party. We're requesting a record of what's been submitted and any digital logs tied to the incident. We were told the data was being reviewed. They had voice commands, driver interaction logs, and Bluetooth call records from the time of the crash. I could tell the agent was surprised we even knew those existed." 3 days later, a file was sent to Marjorie's email. We sat together at her laptop, the sound of the dishwasher humming in the background as she clicked through the report. The claim packet confirmed autopilot engagement and referenced event data available upon legal request. But that wasn't the headline. Marjorie opened the call metadata summary, and later, with Carla's subpoena, we obtained the full audio. And there it was. When the subpoenaed audio arrived, we pressed play. A phone call, initiated through the car's Bluetooth system, was made within 20 seconds of the collision, and it was Jasmine's voice. "She's down. She's not going to be able to go back home like this. This is our chance." A pause. "We'll fix the papers. The car will take the blame. Brandon won't ask questions. He's terrified of hospitals." I stared at the screen. It didn't even sound like she was shaken. Just matter of fact, cold, efficient. That file changed everything. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. Hard, digital, time-stamped proof. "I knew it," Marjorie whispered. "I knew she was scheming, but this is criminal." I felt sick. Not because of the injury, but because I'd let her so close. I'd hugged her. I'd given her birthday gifts. I had let her into my family. She wanted the house, I said softly. She didn't even care how. That night, Marjorie contacted a detective she knew, retired now but still active in the legal circles, a woman named Carla Jennings. She forwarded the logs and explained the entire situation, start to finish. Carla agreed to meet us the next morning. When she arrived, she wore jeans and a blazer, hair up in a bun, notepad in hand. "This is bad," she said plainly after hearing everything. "You've got just enough to open a formal complaint, and if the guardianship was filed fraudulently, that's going to unravel fast once we subpoena the digital records." "What do we do?" I asked. "We let them keep thinking they're winning," she said. "Let them keep stacking paperwork. The more they touch, the more they leave fingerprints. And then," Carla smiled, "then we press play." I leaned back in my chair. For the first time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt prepared. They wanted me out of the way. They thought I wouldn't notice. They didn't know I had people. And they certainly didn't know that this old woman still had fight in her. They started it with lies. I was going to end it with truth. It was a strange kind of power, having the truth sit silently in a file on Marjorie's desktop. That Bluetooth call log, those 3 sentences, took everything from assumption to evidence, and we hadn't even played it for anyone official yet. But just knowing what was in our hands made it easier to breathe. Carla, the retired detective, didn't waste time. She came by the next morning with a list of steps already typed up on a clipboard. "The most important thing now," she said, "is not tipping your hand. If Jasmine or Brandon suspects you're building a case, they'll start covering tracks." "They already are," Marjorie muttered, clicking open a spreadsheet she'd built to track every interaction, every document, every phone call. We filed a formal police report. Carla helped us phrase everything precisely. It wasn't a public confrontation, it was a quiet one. We didn't need noise. We needed accuracy, timelines, digital trails, screenshots. The officer at the precinct, a tall young man named Ruiz, listened carefully as Carla walked him through the documents. When she reached the part about the Tesla logs, his eyebrows rose. "You have a synced voice log?" he asked. "We do," she said, sliding over the flash drive. He plugged it into a laptop, pressed play, and we all listened again. Jasmine's voice, too calm, too rehearsed. "She's down. She's not going to be able to go back home like this. This is our chance." A soft breath. "We'll fix the papers. The car will take the blame. Brandon won't ask questions. He's terrified of hospitals." The room was silent. Then Ruiz hit pause. "Did she know the call was being recorded?" "No," I said. "But the car did." He nodded. "That might be the smartest machine in the story." The police opened an investigation that afternoon. Quiet for now. They didn't notify Jasmine or Brandon. They didn't come knocking. They wanted to gather more before doing anything official. Meanwhile, I played my part. I let Jasmine keep texting me sweet check-ins. I let Brandon send short voicemails saying he'd stop by soon. They had no idea. I even called Jasmine one evening, pretending to be confused about a Medicare bill. "Oh, don't worry about that, Mama Eleanor," she said, full sugar. "I'll take care of it for you." I could hear music in the background, laughter, glasses clinking. She was throwing a dinner party in my house. Marjorie almost crushed her teacup when I told her. "She's entertaining in your home while you're exiled to a guest room like you're an inconvenience," she hissed. "We're getting closer. I want to see your face when it all drops." So did I. But Carla advised patience. "We're building a net. Every day they stay confident is a day they leave more fingerprints." The investigation moved slowly but surely. Carla had contacts, retired cops, clerks, even a cybersecurity expert who pulled metadata from the call file. We learned that Jasmine had placed the call before even getting out of the car. She hadn't rushed to check on me. She hadn't even looked back. She made a call. And that call, we discovered, had been to a number registered under a shell LLC tied to an estate lawyer. a lawyer whose firm specialized in elder transfers and accelerated property liquidations. "That's not coincidence," Carla said. "That's premeditation." It added fuel to the case. With that discovery, the DA's office gave the green light to dig deeper. In the meantime, we requested a complete account history from my bank. 2 new charges stood out: a $395 consultation fee from a law firm downtown, and another charge from a brokerage site. "Valuation service," it said. Jasmine was getting bolder. The final straw came when a letter arrived addressed to me, but forwarded through their address. It was from an elder services agency, confirming an initial assessment for assisted living eligibility. I hadn't requested it, but someone had, and they used my name. I took a deep breath. My hand trembled slightly as I handed it to Carla. "That's it," she said. "Time to go legal." She reached out to a lawyer she trusted, a woman named Sonia, sharp as a blade and quiet as a trap. Sonia helped us file for an emergency injunction against any guardianship filings pending investigation. That move alone bought us leverage. Next, we filed a notice of fraud with the county probate office, flagging all documents involving my name in the past 60 days. Then we sent a preservation notice to the brokerage firm and the law office. And last, Marjorie's idea, we sent Jasmine a cease and desist for unauthorized access to my medical records, revoked any purported authorizations, and filed a privacy complaint with my provider. Everything moved in silence. By the time she looked up, the net would already be closing, and still, Jasmine didn't know. Not until Sonia served her in person. It was a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there, but Marjorie was. She parked across the street just to watch. She opened the door in that silk robe she likes to wear when she wants to feel rich, Marjorie said later, sipping her coffee like it was spiked, smiled like she had nothing in the world to worry about. And then Sonia handed her the envelope. "What'd she do?" I asked. Her face dropped like a house of cards. She tried to hide it, but that chin twitch gave her away. You've never seen someone close a door that fast without slamming it. I closed my eyes and let the image sit there. Jasmine, caught off guard. Jasmine realizing the game wasn't hers anymore. But we weren't finished. That night, Sonia called. "The next step is formal hearings. We're requesting a judge review the documents she filed, and we'll be including the audio." "The car recording?" I asked. She smiled through the phone. "The very one." My heart beat faster. I wasn't going to have to raise my voice. I wasn't going to have to argue. I was just going to sit there and let her own words do all the work. For weeks, she thought I was too slow, too weak, too confused to catch her. But all I did was wait. And soon, the whole court would hear what we already knew. Jasmine didn't make a mistake. She made a plan. And now that plan was going to take her down. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, but in presence. The walls were plain, the carpet industrial, the air thick with nerves. I sat quietly at the end of the hallway, Kane beside me, watching the second hand on the clock tick like a countdown. Marjorie sat next to me, legs crossed, hands folded neatly over a manila folder. Inside it, the flash drive, the audio, the truth. "Just remember," she whispered, "you don't have to say anything. Let them talk themselves into a corner." Across the hall, Jasmine was already inside the courtroom. Brandon stood next to her. He looked exhausted. His suit didn't fit quite right, like it had been bought in a rush. Jasmine, however, looked like she was attending a brunch. Hair done, heels sharp, pearl earrings in place. The picture of grace under pressure. If you didn't know better, the bailiff called us in. I took my seat beside Sonia at the front. She gave me a nod. Carla sat behind us in the gallery, notebook in hand. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and reading glasses, called the session to order. Today we are reviewing the petition for temporary guardianship over Eleanor Davis, filed by Jasmine Harris Davis. We will also hear a counter motion challenging the validity of said petition, as well as an evidentiary request for consideration. Sonia stood. "Your Honor, We'd like to begin by entering into Record Exhibit A, an audio file obtained via subpoena from Tesla Inc., with verified timestamps, recorded by the vehicle at the time of the alleged accident. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Sonia inserted the drive into the court's audio system. Objections may be noted, the judge said evenly. We'll hear it. A moment of silence. Then, Jasmine's voice. She's down. She's not going to be able to go back home like this. This is our chance. A soft breath. We'll fix the papers. The car will take the blame. Brandon won't ask questions. He's terrified of hospitals. The room froze. The judge removed her glasses. Jasmine's smile faltered. She looked at Brandon, who was already turning pale. Sonia spoke again. This recording was made immediately following the incident that placed Ms. Davis in the hospital. It is clear evidence of premeditated fraud and misuse of legal guardianship filings. Brandon shifted in his seat. I didn't know, he muttered. I swear I didn't know. The judge looked directly at Jasmine. Do you wish to explain this? She cleared her throat. Your Honor, that was taken out of context. I was in shock. People say strange things when they're upset. You sounded quite composed. Jasmine's voice cracked. It wasn't malicious. I was just worried about her. Sonia didn't even flinch. And the mail redirection? The property valuation request? The power of attorney inquiries? Jasmine opened her mouth, but no words came out. The judge leaned back. Effective immediately, the petition for guardianship is denied and dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for review of potential fraud and elder abuse charges. My heart thudded. I didn't celebrate. I didn't grin. I just breathed. Fully, deeply, for the first time in what felt like months. Jasmine stood up suddenly. Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. I was trying to protect her. The judge raised her hand. Sit down, Ms. Harris Davis. I've heard enough. Brandon looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. He couldn't meet my eyes. When the session adjourned, people filed out slowly. Jasmine stormed out ahead of everyone. Brandon trailed behind, shoulders hunched, phone already in hand like he needed an excuse not to speak to anyone. Marjorie walked beside me, her hand lightly touching my back. You did it, she said. No, I replied. She did it to herself. Outside the courthouse, the wind was light, but it didn't chill me. I stood there for a moment, just watching the flag flutter above the building, thinking about how close I'd come to losing everything. A reporter had shown up, clearly tipped off about the case. She tried to approach me. Ms. Davis, do you have a statement? I looked her square in the eye. Just that sometimes all you need is one voice to tell the truth, and sometimes that voice comes from a car. She blinked, confused. I didn't elaborate. We drove home in silence. Not sad silence, satisfied silence. Justice was quiet. It didn't need a spotlight. When we pulled into Marjorie's driveway, I asked her to hand me my phone. I scrolled through the messages, Jasmine's fake sweet texts, Brandon's awkward updates. I didn't reply. I just deleted them, one by one. And then I opened the voice memo app, pressed record. This is Eleanor Davis, I said softly, and I remember everything. I saved it. Not because I needed proof, but because I wanted to hear my own voice tell me what they tried to erase. That night, I didn't sleep. I made tea at 1 a.m., sat in Marjorie's kitchen with the old ceramic mug she always saved for me, and just listened to the stillness, to the quiet, to my own breath. I thought about the years I spent keeping the peace, letting things slide, looking the other way, but I wasn't the one who lost this time. They thought they were clever. I didn't need to scream or threaten. I pressed play, and the truth did the rest. And in the end, that was more than enough. 2 weeks after the court ruling, I walked back into my house. Not as a guest, not as a patient, but as its owner. The key turned with a satisfying click. The brass felt cool and certain in my hand, steady where the last weeks hadn't been. The door creaked just like I remembered. The scent hit me first. lavender oil and lemon cleaner. Jasmine's cover-up. She had tried to sterilize the house of me, wipe away my fingerprints, my life. But there are some things you can't erase. The floor still creaked in the same corner near the kitchen. The small chip on the hallway baseboard was still there. Brandon did that with his toy truck when he was 6. The dining room window still caught the evening light just right, the way Charles and I used to watch it when we slow danced after dinner. But everything else? Different. Furniture rearranged, my rocking chair moved to the guest room. New rug, new art on the wall, abstract and soulless. The curtains were replaced with blackout drapes. The family photos I once had framed in the hallway? Gone. Packed away. Probably in a box in the garage. It was my house. But it didn't feel like home. Not yet. Marjorie helped me do a walkthrough. She carried a clipboard and made notes like she was preparing for a full forensic sweep. "Anything missing?" she asked. "My old recipe box," I said quietly. It was in the kitchen hutch. She opened drawers, scanned cabinets. "Probably stuffed in the attic. I'll check." I moved through each room slowly. Not because of my leg, but because of the weight. It was like reclaiming a battlefield. Every inch reminded me that someone I welcomed into my life, into my family, had tried to uproot me, erase me, sell off what I built. I found my prayer book shoved behind some towels in the linen closet. I found one of my old gospel CDs, scratched, in the back of a drawer filled with Jasmine's essential oils. I found my houseplants in the garage, yellowing. That one nearly broke me, but I took a deep breath, rolled up my sleeves, and started restoring, plant by plant, frame by frame, pillow by pillow. I opened the windows. I played Mahalia Jackson on the kitchen radio. I made cornbread. I cooked a pot of beans that made the whole house smell like memory. Brandon came by 2 days later. He didn't knock. He stood at the edge of the porch like a boy who'd gotten caught stealing. "Can I come in?" I looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. He stepped inside, looked around. "Looks like you've got it back to how it used to be." "Not yet," I said, still working on it. He sat down at the kitchen table, fidgeted with the napkin holder. "I didn't know what she was doing. I swear, Ma." I didn't answer. I thought she was just helping. I didn't think she'd actually file anything. I poured myself some tea. Didn't offer him any. He sighed. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "Good," I said, "because I haven't." He nodded slowly, eyes downcast. "I don't know what to do now." "Start by doing better," I replied. "Not for me, for yourself, for your future." He got up to leave, but paused at the door. "You were right, you know. She always knew how to make it sound sweet. I just wanted peace." I looked at him, softening just enough to say, "Then stop making excuses for people who serve poison in teacups." He blinked, nodded, and walked out. I watched him go without tears. Jasmine didn't come back. She was facing charges now. Fraud, elder abuse, possibly obstruction. Carla said the case was solid. I didn't go to the hearings. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I'd already heard everything I needed. But I did attend the final judgment, only because I wanted to see the moment it all ended. She walked in wearing flats and a somber gray suit. No makeup, no smile. The mask was gone. The court ruled against her on every count. Her lawyer didn't even try to defend most of it. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket on my lap, the breeze soft and the gospel low. Marjorie brought over peach cobbler. We didn't talk about Jasmine or Brandon. We talked about spring planting, about how to get my ferns green again, about nothing and everything. And for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. But peace isn't the same as forgetting. I remember every detail, every silence, every signature I never gave, every meal Jasmine cooked in my kitchen while planning my exit. I remember how easy it was for people to believe I was just a confused old woman. And I remember how wrong they were. This house is mine, every brick, Every memory, every breath it holds. They almost stole it. Almost. But almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, and I'm not done yet. The next morning, I walked around barefoot. It might seem small, but it mattered. I hadn't done that since before the accident. Cool tiles under my feet, carpet that welcomed my steps. I stood in my living room and just listened. To nothing, and to everything. I opened my old photo albums, flipped through pictures of birthdays, anniversaries, Sunday dinners, faces that knew love, not greed. I placed them back where they belonged on the mantle. Then I made a phone call. To the church. I told them I'd be back in service next Sunday, and I'd be bringing cornbread for the fellowship table. Because healing isn't just about what you survived, and it's about what you reclaim. Later that week, I sat at my writing desk, the one Jasmine had stashed in the garage like it was junk, and wrote letters, real ones, to friends I hadn't seen in years, to my niece in Atlanta, to a former neighbor who moved to Tampa. I told them I was still here, still standing. Then I took a Polaroid of myself on the front steps, holding a cup of tea. Just me, no filter, no performance, just presence. I framed it, put it by the door. So the next time someone tried to rewrite the story of who belonged here, they'd know exactly who they were dealing with. A week later, I sat in the same chair Charles once used to read the Sunday paper. The morning light poured through the window, hitting the rug just right, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and jasmine. My Jasmine. Not her. Marjorie had gone home the night before. The house was quiet, but not lonely. Quiet like an exhale. A final, satisfying breath after a long-held tension. I leaned back and listened to the walls. They didn't speak, but they held memory. They held me. I opened the drawer to my side table and pulled out the envelope the DA's office had sent. Inside was a letter of confirmation. Jasmine had accepted a plea. 5 years probation. Mandatory elder care education and community service. It didn't feel like triumph, but it did feel like protection. Protection for others who might have ended up where I almost did. There was something else in the envelope too, a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. It held the official copy of the Tesla recording. I'd heard it enough times to memorize every syllable, but this time I listened to it all the way through. She can't live alone after this. We'll fix the papers. It's already done. And then a pause, a breath, and a faint laugh. She laughed. That part had been cut from the courtroom playback, but there it was. I saved the file under a new name, Evidence, just in case MP3. Then I opened a blank document and typed out everything that had happened, from the accident to the court ruling, from Brandon's silence to the final judgment. I titled it, Inheritance of Silence. Maybe one day someone would read it. Maybe not. But it would be there. A record, a memory, a warning. I emailed it to Carla with a simple message, in case anyone ever doubts what happened. Then I opened my old voicemail, one from Jasmine. Hi, Mama Eleanor, just checking in. Hope you're feeling okay. Let me know if you need anything. I deleted it, one from Brandon. Hey, Ma. Jasmine said you're doing all right. I'll swing by when I can. Deleted. Then came one I hadn't heard in years. Charles. He'd recorded it during a fishing trip years ago, just his voice saying, Ellie, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're home when I get there. I didn't delete that one. I backed it up twice. Later that evening, I walked out to the porch and looked at the mailbox. My name was back on it. E. Davis in clean, permanent lettering. No sticker, no tape, no question. I picked a marker and wrote one more thing underneath. Let no one take what God has given. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and dialed the local community center. When the receptionist picked up, I said, Hi, this is Eleanor Davis. I'd like to volunteer. What kind of work? Whatever you've got, I said. Preferably somewhere with people who think no one's listening.
She laughed gently. We've got plenty of that. Good, I said, because I've got ears and I've got time. After hanging up, I wrote one last letter. To myself, just one line. You are not replaceable. I folded it, tucked it into my Bible, and went to bed early for the first time in months. I didn't dream, but I didn't need to, because I was already living what they tried to steal. The next morning,
I walked to the garden and pulled on my gloves. The soil was still damp from last night's rain. I planted new marigolds, bright yellow, full of life. Jasmine hated the smell. I chuckled at that, pressing each flower deep into the earth. I stood back and wiped my brow. Behind me, the house stood firm. I wasn't just taking back space, I was planting roots again. Later that day, I walked to the community center. They placed me at the welcome desk. Seniors came in for lunch and bingo, and young volunteers shuffled about, not knowing which form was which. I smiled, helped them find the right papers, made small talk about recipes and grandbabies. One woman, maybe 72, sat beside me and whispered, "It's nice having someone who gets it." I didn't ask what she meant. I just nodded, because I did get it. That evening, I returned home to a voicemail from the pastor's wife. "We'd love to have you speak at next month's seniors circle. You've been through a lot, Eleanor. People need to hear from someone who's come out stronger." I sat with that. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew this. My voice wasn't broken. It had just been waiting. And maybe now, it was time to use it. They almost took the house. I took back the ground. Have you ever trusted someone in your family, only to realize they had an entirely different plan behind your back? And what would you have done if you found out a loved one tried to use your recovery or your age as a way to take what's rightfully yours? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this story powerful or eye-opening, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and tap that bell icon so you don't miss tomorrow's story. Also, share this with someone, because you never know who might be going through something like this. Our other videos should be appearing on your screen now. Go check those out next, and I'll see you again tomorrow, same time, with another brand new story.